I am currently standing in the starting area of Alefgard, the world of Dragon Quest. Anybody that has played Dragon Quest is wondering right now, Toya, why are you playing this game? That's a terrible RPG. And the reason is that today I want to talk about survival arcs. Right now, if I take one step over an invisible line that is right in front of my character, in addition to the slimes and red slimes that populate the starting area, I will start to encounter Drakis. And if I walk 15 paces north, I will cross into another area also filled with Drakis, and 15 paces north of that, I will start encountering ghosts. 7 paces west of there, I will start running into magicians, in addition to ghosts and Drakis and red slimes, and regular slimes will disappear entirely. This is a problem, because the first objective in Dragon Quest is to get to the Cave of Roto, or Erdrick in English, and retrieve the player's proof of ancestry from it. But to get to the cave, I first have to get through all of these random encounters, and at the start of the game, all of these enemies are mathematically impossible for me to get past. See, the player's stats in Dragon Quest are based on the first 4 letters of their name. Every letter has a point value ranging from 0 to 15. Those points are added up during character creation, divided by 16, and the remainder is used to determine their starting stats and growth type, which basically causes 2 stats to improve more quickly as they level up and 2 stats to improve more slowly. But regardless of the hero's starting stats or growth type, the math is essentially the same. The magic number for Dragon Quest is level 3, because until level 3 the player gets no magic spells and their agility is so low their defense will always be 0. So their attack stat is all that matters. The basic universal damage formula in Dragon Quest is attack minus defense divided by 2 divided by 2. You get a character's attack by adding their strength to the strength of their weapon, and their defense by having their agility and adding the defense of their armor. There are some variations, like separate formulas for critical hits and damage variance, but this is basically how it works. What all this means is that until they reach level 3, the player will always take damage equal to half the opponent's attack, unless they equip some piece of armor that gives at least 4 points in defense, because dividing the defense by 2 means that you need at least 4 points in defense to gain 1 actual point of damage reduction. Slimes have 5 strength, 3 agility, and 3 hit points. Red slimes have 7 strength, 3 agility, and 4 hit points. Drakis have 9 strength, 3 agility, and 6 hit points. Ghosts have 11 strength, 8 agility, and 7 hit points, and magicians have 11 strength, 12 agility, 13 hit points, and the ability to cast Gira, called Hurt in English, which ignores defense and deals 3 to 10 damage, depending on where it hits between its minimum and maximum. No matter what the player's starting stats are, without equipment or critical hits, they will always deal 1 damage to any of these enemies. In turn, the player takes 1 to 2 damage from slimes and 1 to 3 damage from red slimes. These first 2 enemies are easily survivable, since any hero you can make will always have a 1-to-1 damage trade with the monsters each turn, while having 3 to 5 times the number of hit points. The problem is that the Drakis 1 zone away in either direction will always outpace the player's damage 1 to 2 or 1 to 4, taking 4 to 8 turns to defeat the player depending on variance, while the player needs 6 turns of normal damage to defeat them. Ghosts and magicians likewise outpace the player on a 1 to 5 to 1 to 10 basis. This is the first survival arc, and it is a seminal moment in the history of role-playing games. The only monsters the player can survive against when they first turn Dragon Quest on are slimes and red slimes. This is a mathematical fact, one that can only be changed by gaining levels or equipment, and there is no means of gaining the money necessary to purchase equipment without fighting. Now, while the game does give the player enough gold to afford the leather armor, it does not give them enough to afford the leather armor and the club at the same time, and the club is necessary in order for them to start increasing their damage output against these enemies. Furthermore, the GP payout on slimes and red slimes is low enough that it takes fewer battles to reach level 3 than it does to afford the club. Even with the leather armor, the magician's magic ignores defense. If the random encounters were not there, the player could go anywhere in the world, but would be too weak to defeat the Dragon Lord at the end of the game. Thus, the player depends on scaling a ladder of encounters to become strong enough to reach the end of the game, but must begin with the very bottom rung. Scaling that ladder means pursuing a path of least resistance and minimal aggression, in which the player's resources are minimally taxed. The player is told to seek out conflict, but must resist and actively avoid all conflicts with a realistic possibility of defeat. This means that the first thing the player actually has to do in Dragon Quest is run around the starting area, mashing the attack command to defeat 23 slimes and reach level 3. The player is a hero, but they can only play the role of heroism inside a confined space. Past games for Japanese personal computers like Mugen no Shinzo and Dungeon also had survival arcs, but Dragon Quest, as the first best-selling RPG, was responsible for transmitting this structure to a much wider audience, to the order of 3 million people worldwide. This was the game that inspired Itoi to create the Mother series, that got Sakaguchi the green light to make Final Fantasy, and that convinced Sega they needed RPGs of their own, culminating in Phantasy Star. And each of these games, to some degree, replicated the survival arc of Dragon Quest. To be clear, I am not the first person to talk about survival arcs, nor the one who coined the term. That honor goes to Leroy Lewin of Dead Genre Chronicles, who explored the concept of the survival arc in a special episode on Phantasy Star and Etrian Odyssey, which you can find linked in the video description. In that episode, Mr. Lewin explored many facets of the arc: how it can welcome anyone willing to put the time in, how it can exploit the player through a lack of respect for their time, and how it models an idealized form of profit. In the real world, doing all the right things doesn't guarantee you peace of mind or economic security. You can interview perfectly, get the best grades, go to the right schools, and at the end of the day, be passed up for someone else. In the real world, most people must work hard, but only some of the people that work hard will be rewarded. In these video games, everyone who works hard will be inevitably rewarded, and everyone who does not will never make it. You have better odds of winning the lottery than of defeating the Dragon Lord before level 20, so you must grind levels and grind some more, and find the safest spaces to grind. Ultimately, I think what we should take away from survival arcs are what they inform us about the characters subjected to them. Their world is hostile to their existence. The fact that the hero of Dragon Quest has to grind just to reach his ancestor's cave tells us that he begins his journey unprepared and untrained to succeed his heroic legacy. The fact that he does overcome these challenges in a hostile world conveys in action what the game lacks in words: his development and progress as a person, which is reflected not by introspection, but by how he continually exerts force to do what is right and stop the Dragon Lord's takeover of his kingdom. This has been Toya. Thank you for joining me today. Please consider liking and subscribing to support the channel. You can find me on Twitter at VanguardUs, on Twitch at DecodeToya, and of course, right here at RPG Maniacs.